It's autumn, and it's time for those visitors to the garden and the lawn, the fungi. The fall seems to trigger the fruiting of fungi all over the yard. My observation through life has been there's really only three kinds of people when it comes to mushrooms. There are the people who are fascinated by mushrooms. There are those who want to eat mushrooms. Mycophagists, mushroom eaters. Then there's that final group. That's a pretty good number of Americans, and they're the ones that are scared to death of these things, okay? That mushrooms bring fear into our hearts. The mycophobics, those who are frightened by the mushroom. Me, I fall into the first two groups. I've been fascinated by mushrooms most of my life. I do love eating mushrooms. I enjoy hunting mushrooms and so on. But then again, I'm an odd character. I happen to like spiders, and I also enjoy serpents. And so now that it's cooled down in fall, we've had a little bit of rain. I'm hoping there might be more coming. I decided that I'll reseed my lawn. Well, just as soon as I did that, and I put down seeds and I spread compost over the top, and then turned some water back on, and then a rain or two fell, suddenly I had fruitings of fungi all over the place. The substrata, the dead sod, the compost that I put over the top, and the water, plus being fall in combination all at once, caused this massive fruiting of mushrooms. Most of what came up is the common agaric, the meadow mushroom. Agaricus campestris, probably. It could be some other species. Here, take a look at this. Check out this group of sod buttons over here. We got just one beautiful fruiting popped up all over the yard. I probably would have gone about putting these into the frying pan, but they're getting chewed up about as fast as they come up out of the ground by snails, slugs, and other bugs and thugs that all know that they're good to eat. They know better than I do that these are good to eat. So here at Bill's house, the presence of mushrooms in fall inspires me to go find a frying pan, some olive oil or some such thing. I mean, I kind of get hungry when I see all of this, if they're fresh and in good shape. But with a lot of people, this is terror. They come out in the front yard and they go, oh my God, mushrooms have invaded my yard. They'll pop up in the garden, they pop up on the lawns, they come up around your trees. If you got old, dead, buried stumps in the landscape in the fall, the mushrooms come up, And I mean, I've watched people just lather up into a tizzy because there's fungi and wanting to know what to do about them. I don't know. There's always been the connection between toadstools and witches and such, probably because some of these fungi are hallucinogenic and will send you on a trip, that there's been this connection to dark magic that's gone on for centuries. So there's been a mistrust, I think, at least in European traditions, about fungi. On the other hand, been an awful lot of chefs in the same tradition that find these fantastic. So it's hard to say where all of the fear comes from around these little guys, but I think the 20th century really helped promote the idea that fungus is evil. This was by people who made disinfectant chemicals and so on, and people who made soil sterilants, and so much of the chemistry that came about during that period of time. We thought that these fungi that spread through the soil and spread through all sorts of different things. I mean, they'll grow on cow pies, they grow on rotten wood, they grow on compost, they grow all sorts of places. Anyway, they kind of promoted the idea that fungus is bad for you. And so a lot of us went with that. It was a good campaign, rub bleach on everything, use Vapam on the soil, get rid of all these hostile fungi. But shut up, crow. The truth of the matter is that most of the fungi on Earth are actually important. They're decomposers. They feed other plants. The connection between fungi and other forms of life on this planet in the 21st century is only being uncovered. We're just beginning to understand just how important these little toadstools are to us. And so I think it's time that we start overcoming a lot of our dread, because most of our plants won't even grow properly without these things. This agaricus that's come up here in my lawn, this mushroom grows with sod. It's almost impossible to have sod pastures, lawns, and whatnot around without having a certain amount of this mushroom and several other mushrooms that associate with grass roots. Basically, the mushrooms actually encourage the plants to grow properly. There's a sharing that goes on. Fungi break down stuff in the soil that the plants can't get at, and they actually share it back to plants, while the fungi will take from the plants sugars that they can get easily from the sun. It's called a mycorrhizal relationship. It's that relationship between mushrooms and other higher plants. It's very complex. We're only beginning to understand it. And so we shouldn't be afraid of them. They're an extremely important part of our environment, and they're also almost impossible to get rid of. So one of the myths I would like to dispel is the idea that when the mushroom comes up in your lawn, if you go out and you pull them up or you try to poison them or do something to the mushrooms, that it's going to stop the growth. That myth is not true. The mushroom is only the fruiting body. It's sort of like the apple on an apple tree. And so pulling up the mushrooms or destroying the mushrooms as they fruit isn't going to help anything at all. It's sort of like saying, I'll get rid of that darn apple tree by picking all the apples off. That's kind of how productive it is, because 90-some% of the mushroom is actually underneath the soil as a web of fine little strands called mycorrhizae. And so pulling up the mushroom doesn't do anything. If you have dogs, children around, creatures that you're afraid might happen to eat the fungi and you're worried about them being toxic, well, then certainly, picking them off or mowing them actually on a lawn, I think, is my solution. If I didn't want them around, I'd just fire up the old power mower, run them over the top and buzz those babies down so you don't have to look at them. That's probably your best solution. The mushroom spores, which come from the gills underneath here, the mushroom spores will not regerminate back in the presence of mycorrhizae that's in the soil. And so these spores do not make more mushrooms in the spot where you see the mushroom. The wind might carry the spores away over into your neighbor's yard, and they might come up eventually over there. Actually, that's a good thing for them. It is actually a good thing. These mushrooms are basically good. There are a few that can be actually parasitic to plants. The most notable one is the oak root rot or shoestring root rot, or it's also called a stump mushroom, is the Armillaria mela. That mushroom is both a decomposer and also it's a parasite that attacks trees and shrubs and can kill them. Now, of course, if you have it in the landscape, you can't get rid of it anyway. The only thing you can do is understand it, be aware of it, and then plant things in your landscape that are not susceptible to it. Don't go planting lots of oak trees, for instance, in a landscape where you happen to have Armillaria mela growing. On the other hand, Armillaria mela is edible. I don't find it delicious, but it's edible. You can eat the thing. A lot of people like it. So breaking this all down, I think, it's a very, very tiny percentage of the mushrooms on Earth that are actually very toxic. That's a very small percentage. Most of them are pretty easy to identify. Like the amanitas, which are some of the most common toxic mushrooms, they all have a cup at the bottom of the stalk over here. If you take that mushroom up, it's got this cup, like an eggshell, that the mushroom grew out of and it popped open. And so we call it the death cup in common English, if you want to remember it. If you happen to see mushrooms, maybe big white ones, for instance, large white mushrooms, white gills, and they have a cup at the bottom of the mushroom, although there can be other colors too. If you see these in your yard, they are quite toxic. The one I've got over here in the yard, this guy is the wild relative of the store-bought button mushroom, okay? They're a little coarser. I don't think they're quite as refined. I don't like them as much as the ones we get from the supermarkets, but they're fine to eat. There's nothing wrong with them. And most of them are actually edible. Most mushroom are edible. Some are not good to eat because they're too tough. They're bitter, have off smells, some are slimy. There's a whole lot of reasons why we would discard probably over 80% of the mushrooms we find on Earth. But there is that one pretty large group of mushrooms that are absolutely delicious. Most mushrooms are beneficial to the environment. A few of them are incredibly delicious and also quite valuable. The rest of them are just like, eh. There's the big group of LBMs, the little brown mushrooms. Those are quite common actually in sods, pastures, and so on, and in some woodlands too, depending on what type of little brown mushroom you're running across. Now some of those are very hallucinogenic. They contain psilocybin and psilocin. These are interesting compounds. They are currently illegal for human consumption. It's probably too bad that our government had such a knee-jerk reaction towards these mushrooms, because they're fascinating. The little bit of research that's been done on them is bringing up extraordinary facts about them. And so in the future, as some of the fear we have of fungi alleviates, maybe we'll see more research on the hallucinogenic mushrooms, and we'll find that there were probably some extremely valuable properties to these fungi. I am here suggesting that we release our fear of fungi and loathing. Do as you will. If you feel more comfortable mowing the caps off in the yard, it's fine. The mushrooms are not going to spread by the spores, and you're not going to get rid of them by pulling up the caps. That's not going to go away, and so you're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, and best just grunt, take a rake to them, and walk away if you don't like them there. As for the rest of you who aren't particularly afraid of them, my suggestion is, hey, let them grow and develop. They're going to help your gardens, they're going to help your lawns, they're valuable parts of this environment, and we're only now beginning to understand just how important fungi are in the web of life on this planet. Let's get over the chemistry of the 20th century and start to look at what nature has already offered us. Hey, happy gardening. Thanks for listening, and have a fungy fall.